Awesome. Eddie, hey, so great to have you here. Really appreciate you taking the time today. So, for everyone listening, maybe we could just start with a little bit of a background on who you are and how you got here today.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. I am super pumped to be on with you as well as to go to Catalyst in the fall. My name's Eddie Patch. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders at PartnerPortal.io. My background has been primarily in the B2B space. So I've been in B2B tech and software specifically for the majority of my career. So that included a number of different organizations, both pre-IPO and post-IPO. So I spent time at Groupon, I spent time at Yext, kind of building out the enterprise team there. And then most recently, I was on the leadership team at Rollworks prior to joining on with full time with Partner Portal. During that time across those companies, I was primarily in a sales function. I've been in sales and partnerships as well during the whole time.
Love it. That's awesome. Yeah, and I think I'm really excited to kind of dig into Partner Portal, but maybe we could start like, given that you've seen success as the sales leader for so much of your career, would be awesome to hear a little bit about like how like that kind of side of the coin, because I think people are always interested in like, hey, what's a good way to kind of collaborate with the sales team? Like, have you in any of your previous roles seen much success like collaborating with the partnerships org or selling with partners?
It's a really good question because the early part of my career was definitely very separate and isolated between the sales team and the partnerships team. Like I would often get wind of this other team that was quote unquote doing the big deals, the strategic partnerships that were happening in the background. I never felt as a seller that we were working alongside the partnership team only until the more like recent times and some of the more recent companies I've been with did I really feel that we were aligned closely and kind of going to market together internally. I think I would say that it comes from the top, from leadership instilling that type of mentality, not just like physically putting the two teams next to each other, but having them included in meetings and stand-ups, and having more of a visibility from the C-suite wanting that to take place. The the times that I've seen it done best is when I've seen really good partner leaders that came in and knew how to orchestrate it properly between the sales and partnership team. One instance that comes to mind is Mike Stalker at Rollworks. From day one, he made it his mission to always be in front of the entire sales team, sharing with them almost as if they were his own team, the updates, what's happening in the landscape, why we're doing a partnership, and kind of when it was going to take place, and just that intentionality from him, making sure that he was also doing these things in a larger format for, like, let's say it's like a sales kickoff or an all hands. He always had the podium for his bit, and that doesn't just happen by accident. It's something that he knew it was important. And so when you have a leader like that, it makes it easier for these two teams to work together for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And like, what were some of the ways that the teams collaborated that were better than how you'd seen things done previously?
Yeah, I mean, he was the some of the like more obvious ways are just the shared Slack communities and channels that would be kicked off. It wasn't just our partner team in there with the other partner team. It was all the AEs that were kind of hand selected to be a part of it. We also would assign specific AEs to different partners.
Hmm.
So they almost had ownership over that partnership, just as the partner manager would. And so that gave them this like inside view of what's happening in the partnership, and it also gave an inside outlet for the rest of the sales team to understand. And every rep would have a different partner, so we were able to get a lot of air coverage across the all the partners that way.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that was like probably the most common request from our partners at Amplitude as well was like, hey, could we just work with one sales rep on your side for all of our deals? Like, how do
Yeah.
you reconcile between, a partner who has like, a portfolio of customers and then a company which has a territory strategy, whether it's segments or whatever else, like
Yeah.
how do you then reconcile the two and have like an AE assigned to a partner that probably also has like a territory or something else internally.
Yeah, I'm trying to think in the early days because it was before Mike came in and before at my other companies, it was pretty unorganized and
Yeah.
it took time to get there. I personally, as a rep, would always try to find that individual seller that I could gravitate to at every partner, or the account manager that I could gravitate to. Figure out if there was enough alignment for me to continue building that relationship, and if not, I would always look to get introduced to somebody else. As we got more organized, I think it was easier to do it based on not necessarily vertical, but more around company size.
Hmm.
So segmenting different, having a different AE represented from each segment. So it would be like a
Mm.
SMB and a mid market and a strategic. So this way, I know that that AE is spending their time with just the strategic reps at the partner that are more likely to be working the same type of size deal, same type of buyers, maybe even like overlap across the buying committee.
Awesome. And then like in say in a case where like you have a partner and they're working with like Walmart, for instance, and they're like, hey, we
Yeah.
want to introduce you to Walmart. We think it would be a great fit. Like, does the assigned AE to that partner work that opportunity, or does it go to the person internally who has Walmart on their account list?
So the question would be, would the AE repeat that again?
Yeah, so like would the AE who's working with the partner get the Walmart opportunity, or would the AE who has Walmart on their account list get the opportunity,
Oh,
or
I
would they
see.
work it together?
No, I think it made more sense to bring in the person that was most familiar with Walmart,
Hmm.
regardless if they were the point person. Anytime that we were having a greater exposure of AEs, it was never a bad thing necessarily. I mean, you kind of want that one individual to be represented, but you also want the two teams just working as collaboratively as you can. So no, I would definitely bring in the person who's the most familiar with the account.
Got it. Okay, awesome. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, it's like we were never able to like quite figure that out. Like I think really early days before we had territories at Amplitude, it was like easy. It's like, oh yeah, okay, great. Like you just work together one on one with this partner. Like we had
Yeah.
an AE at Amplitude that was really good at working with partners and just like knocked down a bunch of deals with a particular partner, like big enterprise deals. And it was great, and then as things got bigger, it's like, okay, that partner probably that opportunity needs to go to a different rep, but the person at the partner's like, hey, I love working with X, and can I just send it all to him? And like as you scale, that thing doesn't work quite as well. And
Like a lot of the early stage companies I was at, I was that AE,
mhm,
and it was definitely in my favor
yeah.
to just continue being in. At a certain point, it's just not fair to the other reps, right? Because that person's just taking it on. But it did for me personally. That's where I got a lot of my early exposure to the partner function, was being like a pseudo partner ambassador, representative. So I think it benefited where I am today, is kind of like how I ended up getting here in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's awesome that you've got that kind of experience selling with partners already so that you can kind of be the trusted expert when you have those conversations with folks. And
Yeah,
so,
for
like,
sure.
tell us a little bit about Partner Portal and, like, how did that come together? Obviously, like, you've been working on Partner Portal for a minute now. Would be awesome to kind of
Yeah.
hear the story there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's been a few years. I would say when it first came together, there's a company that my other founders run and operate that had about 25 partnerships at the time, and it was anyone from BigCommerce, Shopify to Miva, a lot of really active partnerships that were sending them leads and going back and forth. So the team at the time, we actually went out to do an evaluation of partner relationship managers that were available to us as a team, and we did all of the kind of the usual suspects you might be familiar with. Um, did our same matrix evaluation that everybody else does when they talk to us, but there was like key areas that we couldn't find that aligned with our type of business. Not just that it was an agency, but it was also a company of 40 employees at the time. We didn't have massive budgets available for a six-figure platform, and there was nothing else that we could actually go and use other than some manual workaround with spreadsheets. So the product was built internally to manage partnerships, just as like a big, like, you know what, we're gonna go do this ourselves kind of moment. And shortly after, realized that we're clearly not the only ones that went through that same experience, and it made sense to spin it out into its own entity and begin offering it to other customers in an easy way. So just being able to fill those gaps and make it simple and take a different approach to what had existed at the time.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I think there's a lot of stories like that where, I think whether it's like Amplitude, for instance, like
Mhm.
Amplitude was started because the team were trying to get behavioral data on the product that they were using, that they were building. They couldn't get it, and so they were like, oh, we're going to build an analytics tool to like get this information. And then the company ended up being the analytics tool. And I think it's probably the same with Segment. It was the same with Optimizely. I want to say like Mailchimp and a bunch of other companies.
Yeah,
Qubit, I think, was the same as well. Like a lot of these cool companies came out of agencies that were like, hey, like we just need this tool ourselves, or from founders that needed it. So
yeah,
I love those because like you have the empathy for the customer from day one because you are the customer, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I always wonder, because I tell that story with prospects and people that are looking to buy, and I'm always curious, like, uh, does everybody give them this story? I don't think it's everybody, but there's definitely a class of companies that got to where they are because they were scratching their own itch, and it worked.
Yeah, 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 I love it. And so, like, I know that you've had a ton of conversations now with people that are working with partners, like all across the spectrum of maturity and challenges. Like, what are some of the
Yeah.
common themes that you kind of see coming up when you're talking to folks? Like, what are the things that they're trying to do? Like, what are the challenges that they're running into?
So yeah, I think things have, based on the conversations I'm having, I would say that there's this level of excitement and enthusiasm for partnerships in general that I have picked up on more recently. I feel the momentum growing just like the rest of the community clearly does too. Uh, it started around the pandemic. You had basically, there was a quote from Matt Hines. He said something like, "If anything, the importance of referrals has increased and accelerated during the pandemic." And I think that was true across all types of partnerships, where overnight events were taken away, and all of a sudden you had to lean into your partners and find other ways to get business and or work together. So there's like a number of tailwinds that are driving this momentum. That's one of them. The other one that I find really interesting, coming from a Martech background, is the events that are happening around third party cookie deprecation. So you've got almost 200,000 B2B software companies who rely on email marketing, ad targeting, intent, cookies, and a number of the changes that are happening are going to impact these B2B sales teams directly. And there's going to be naturally a greater emphasis on the first party data and on partnerships. And I don't think not everyone in our space might articulate that, but I think it's just starting to ripple into the actual mainstream. And it's interesting to see because people are more so scrambling and trying to figure out other revenue streams. And it goes for an interesting conversation at times when these things come up.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think the all three, like the like macro tailwinds, like the increased privacy and like the temperature around cookies and tracking in general. And then also, I think people just like seeing partnerships work more at other companies. Well, when I was at GGV, like, and we were working with the portfolio founders, so many people were making investments in partnerships early. So like when Chris and I were building the team at Optimizely, like, almost no one else had a partnerships team for us to work with. We were always talking to founders or
Yeah.
like a VP of sales, or like someone maybe who does corp dev or something. And now it's like every single team has a partnerships counterpart pretty much. So people were really figuring out that this is something they need to do. But to your point, I think like this year, or maybe like in the next year or two, is really when people are going to start to be looking at their partnerships and saying, hey, like, we want this to be a significant driver of revenue. Like
Yeah.
we want this
Big
to be a
time.
big part of our mix, especially as some of the other things start to scale down, and also like people are going to have to become more cost efficient in these new markets. Like obviously what Partner Portal does is like really quite tied closely to getting partners generating revenue. It's like that's a really big part of what you're doing. Like, tell us a little bit more about like when people come to you, what's the conversation that they're having on day one? Like, what are the things that they're trying to get out of your product?
Yeah, we definitely have like a couple different scenarios that are most common. I would say the most frequent scenario is, hey, uh, we are trying to scale our program now, like, and we need something that isn't going to break the budget, that we can just put in place really quickly and take advantage of everything we're planning on doing. Because people are they're trying to get ahead of any like potential growth that they're anticipating or that's already happening. The other camp of people that come in is you have a number of people entering into partnerships that are new, that are coming from like other industries, other verticals, other functions, where they're getting wind on what's happening in partnerships, so they're making the jump from a career standpoint. So with that, they're also very green, and so for them, they don't know where to start. They don't know where to begin, and we offer that uh, like easy first step. It's formalizing your program, giving your program credibility, whether it's formalizing it for just the couple of partners that you already have, or putting you in a position to court and show off to these other prospective partners that you want to demonstrate that you are in this for the long term, and you're committed to being partners as a big part of your strategy. And so those are the two main people we get. And then we get a lot of people that they used partner management software tools in the past, and they don't realize how things have evolved or how partner tech has evolved. And they're just excited to be able to go and use something different, because a lot of people just didn't have really good experiences, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, I think like I was talking to so, Justin, who was at AWS previously, and
Hmm.
we were talking about the APN program. And I think like it's a very sophisticated, like, and very kind of guardrailed process that they take
Uh-huh.
people through. Like, what are some of the things that you are finding that partners expect from a partnerships team these days? Like, as like a baseline for playing with a partner.
Yeah, I mean, call it a portal, call it a whatever, in a partner environment. Like, I've seen it to the extent of where somebody is trying to establish a partnership, and the other the party actually requires a portal that is part of the agreement, because they want the level of transparency that environment like that provides. And initially, yeah, the basics are, we want to have visibility on everything we've given you. We want to have access to all the resources that are going to help us sell on your behalf and like represent you in the market. That's the baseline. The next level is, oh, how are you going to include us in your sales cycle? Are you going to give us the transparency of what's happening to that deal? So that's where we really shine, is with things like our HubSpot integration and Salesforce, where we're passing back that information and giving them almost a shared CRM in a lot of ways, so that they have that level of visibility. And I think what's going to become the next level of table stakes is just, what are you doing to improve our experience as your partner? Like, what are you making and prioritizing, whether it's the tools that you're offering us, the training, the support, like how are you up leveling our experience as partners, and not just signing a partner agreement and then never talking to you again? Like, what is the onboarding process and the enablement look like?
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I think you touched on something there that's really interesting around like the visibility into an opportunity or a deal.
Yeah.
The partners really like that. And, um, we implemented a PRM at Optimizely, and definitely like certain partners would really be like, hey, you know, it's awesome to see that this is moving to this stage. Like, how should I be engaging, and how can I work with the partner, with the sales team to like move this thing along? Like, what does good in it, like in we've talked a little bit about like sales enablement and like getting salespeople excited about working with partners, but what does like good collaboration look like between a partner and the sales team on a deal? Or like, where do you think that could land up with something like a PRM enabling that kind of data sharing?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think the more visibility that a sales team has with less effort is probably the biggest piece. Like for us, it's giving that easy access visibility to a seller, where pretty soon they're not going to have to log into a portal to even see that. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that shows up in their normal systems and their workflows that they already do. Um, Examples of people doing it really well right now, as on the vendor side, Crossbeam and partnered's doing a great job of facilitating that connection between the sales team and partners. But I think it's the partnerships that I've seen done really well, the ones that are showcasing each other in weekly meetings in their SKO, where I, as a partner, am attending their SKO almost as an employee, where
Mm-hmm.
I'm I'm hosting a training session, not just about my company and what we do, but being a thought leader and offering my expertise to their sales team. And the ones that are the programs that are doing it well, they're taking advantage of the world we're in now, which is a very remote world, where two partners are already working together the same way as if they're basically one company.
Mm-hmm.
Like they are in shared Slack channels, they're on Zoom calls, and they're reviewing pipeline together. They're basically working for the same team, and the ones that are doing this really well are the ones that are just taking it to that next level and almost making it truly feel like they're part of the same organization, and going to market together.
Yeah, and I love it because I think the thing that's awesome about that type of collaboration with Crossbeam is that buying software is really hard. As much as you can make it easy for a buyer to understand like the whole experience, like the workflow, right? Like most companies
Hmm.
just think about them and their customer, and they don't really think about, okay, well, it's us and the customer, but really like the customer interacts with this product, then this product, then this product, then us, and there's also this other party involved, and they're probably trying to figure out, like, they have a few different options, and so it's like it's really awesome when you see companies that are kind of coming together and making life a little bit easier for the customer in that process. So I think it's a really great thing. Like, do you have some other examples of like how the team collaborates, like whether it's with Crossbeam or with other partners that you kind of work with, where you're like just making it easier for the customer to get value out of your products?
Yeah, I think the good sales teams that do this well, they realize that their buyer is establishing like a mini tech stack every time that they talk to them. And so it's, I think they're like, to your point, people do get very self like center like in their own world and thinking that they're only getting talking to them. And so a good seller can understand the difference between a buyer who is building a mini tech stack and needs to know exactly how they're going to connect all the dots, and not assuming that each of these partners that you're working with are competing with you. Like they're not competing on product, and I mean, sure, they might compete on budget, but at the end of the day, it's really just how you can make sure you're fitting into that jigsaw and offering that. Um, so the best instances I've seen with this, and actually on the enterprise level, you'll have scenarios where you have like 3 partners, 4 partners all together on one call with the customer or the prospect, and like that is the maximum level of effort that would go into this. But even just on a smaller level, getting on calls with them and running joint meetings together and going through the product, showcasing how the two would work together. Um, Other than that, I think the ones that also just remove any friction that's required to work with both. I think there's one thing that has not been solved in our industry very well yet, and it's this idea of the requirement of a commercial partnership. Like it's not the greatest experience when you've decided, thank you for I want to buy your product and I love your partner, but now I have to go and go through a sales cycle with each of those partners. It's almost as if it would just be such a better experience if it was all bundled in together with the commercial, but we're not quite there yet. But I could see that being like kind of the North Star for all of this.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like at least from a buyer experience, and I think that's like roughly where AWS is going with their
Yeah,
marketplace and ecosystem. Is like, hey, you can buy almost everything through our marketplace, and you're going to get a discount, on the product. Also, you're going to get a discount on what you're paying AWS, and there's like a bunch of efficiency, and you don't have to go through procurement again. Like there's flexibility on all of that stuff. I think like for the buyer, it's a great experience, and I think like if you're the software vendor, like if you're really confident in the stickiness of your product, and also if you have like quite transparent pricing, makes a ton of sense. I think if you're like still out trying to maximize your value pricing and figure out what the product's worth, it can be like a tricky situation, because like
totally.
you kind of want to own the conversation, and be the AWS in that conversation, right?
Yeah, no, that's really true. Because yeah, if you yeah, no, that's a really good point. I wonder. I like on that too. If it's not a commercial partnership relationships, I do think pretty soon, as much kumbaya as we have in the partner world today, there's going to be these more like formal alliances that are forming, and they will almost be that like mini versions of what you're talking about, where it'll just be smoother and easier to work with that group of companies. I don't think we've seen it officially happen yet, but I do think it's going to be something that I could see happening.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. Like, we did a little bit of that where Amplitude, Braze, and M Particle. We and often Apps Flyer as well, but definitely
Yeah,
those three. Like, we would kind of refer to ourselves as like the modern growth stack. And it's like if you were buying one of them, you'd be probably buying all of them, and like
yeah,
we
yeah.
would do events together. Like we would do parties at conferences together, like a lot of marketing together, like, and just make it easier for people to understand how the whole thing tied together. We didn't really like get to a point where we had where we could do like joint pitches, or that where we had joint pricing, but even just like having a real clear articulation of like, this is why these three products together is like it's not like 1 + 1 + 1. It's like, a multiplicative effect on
Yeah.
like the growth.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think yeah, I've been on the other side of this too, where in industries that had already formed their alliances, and I like there's the one and the number two in the category, and I unfortunately worked for like the number three in the category, and I'd always watch these guys. I'm like, man, they formed their alliance, so like it works, and I've been on the other end too. It's definitely like in the partner world, and at least like partner tech, when I think about the vendor landscape, there's definitely opportunities for that to be established.
Yeah, yeah, and so like with people building partners, because I think you're right. Like it builds kind of a strategic moat around your company if you can like own the hearts and minds of the partners in the space as well as the customers. Like
Yeah,
it does just start to carve you out as like the leader or the category owner of that space. Like and so as people are kind of going out and they're building partnerships, and they want to create guide rails for partners, and so PRM makes a bunch of sense. Like I think a lot of like what people think of a PRM doing historically is like lead submitting, tracking commissions, like they like and a lot of like that kind of financial transaction component. Like how much of that today is still the case, where people are like, where the referral commission is like a key component, and then like what else are people kind of looking for these days?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So with PRMs, traditionally the way that people perceive them today is probably in line with what you described. I'd say that the early PRMs in the space they continue to do those things for the most part. They've built modules on top of it, but that's the primary function. I think where PRM turns into something else, and I think there's a new wave of companies that people will soon not refer to them as PRMs. It's going to be more of like a partner enablement type company, or maybe a different category that pops up. You have like the ecosystem management is one that I've seen. So slowly, some of these companies will pull themselves out of the traditional PRM, and what it'll support is a better go-to-market motion, just in generally from an enablement standpoint. So that could include anything from what we have in Partner Portal today, which is the cross-beam integration, where I'm physically pulling in data from other systems that I can leverage and execute on. So we pull in overlap data, we pull in populations, and it gives our customers the opportunity to execute on data from other systems. So that's one thing that is like one signal of where these companies will ultimately play well and what people want. And then to take the enablement area even further, um, there's just there we've established a shared environment for CRM sharing, but we haven't established shared environments for just general go-to-market motions between something as trivial as setting up a tech partnership or an integration. Um, if we touch on that for a second, like if you're establishing a new partner integration, you're using multiple systems to do that, and you're having to basically have information just scattered across Google Docs and Jira, Asana, whatever it might be. But there's an opportunity for companies like us and these new wave of partner enablement or partner ecosystem management to facilitate that. And I think the market is catching on to it, and they're looking for more of those things now, where it's a mutually shared experience that they can both operate within.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I think you're totally right, where it's just like, you know you're kind of filling that gap where like the company has all of their internal processes and resources, and then like the other company does as well, and then like the partner people kind of somehow meet in the middle, and it's like, and there isn't a centralized place to keep all of that stuff. And I think, like you say, there's so many more needs and requests and opportunities now than there was previously when a lot of other tech was built. Like
Yeah,
I'm just thinking, we built a really strong reseller model in APAC, and we were teaching our Korean partners how to, run local events and like do their own demo days, and like basically like do mini conferences, but like using really similar agendas and content to what we would do in the US, but like with their own spin, and like almost having like a pack that someone could just take and like run with would be so powerful, like a
yeah,
guider for doing that.
for sure. I mean, you have all these partner leaders, like the partner leaders already have their own frameworks that they follow. They have their own like unofficial documents that they follow. Like, why is that not formalized?
Yeah.
Like the other request that we get a lot is people. So what's also happening, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe this, but you have certain types of vertical vendor systems that are becoming more popular, where the partner team doesn't necessarily get to drive the decisions of what's being used across the company. So that don't get me wrong, the partner team, the partner individuals are moving up vertically in organizations, but they're not making the decisions around, for example, what's the enablement platform that the sales team is using, or the learning management system that we're onboarding our customers with. Those decisions are getting made, and they're basically a license that the whole company can use, and then the partner team is effectively forced to use something like HighSpot or ShowPad, which are great platforms, but maybe it wasn't their first choice. So another request and what people are looking at doing is finding ways that they can leverage all these tools that are being purchased by the other teams for their partners. And so that's another area that I feel like this new wave of companies can support.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I think as much as the partner team can kind of piggyback off of that content creation that other departments does, the better. Like something I've seen be really successful is like both sides. One where, hey, we're borrowing what product marketing or what customer success or what sales are putting together for their decks and trainings and everything
Yeah,
for and teaching our partners. But quite often the partner team were like, maybe 6 months, a year ahead of like the internal teams on where the market was going, because they were out speaking to like all of the other people in the space and
they,
like
they
really
already
had a
knew.
read.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so like
yeah,
quite often it was like we were the ones that we'd put together slides talking about the vision to partners, and then the product marketing team would be like, hey, can we get that in our deck, like can we talk more about how you were putting that together? And so there is like a real opportunity to like pull in that stuff from HighSpot or Guru or whatever, but also like maybe opportunities to kind of pull that stuff back into HighSpot and Guru from where it's being co-created with the partners as well.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I like you personally, but also most partner individuals are kind of early adopters in general. So it's that it makes sense that they would be the ones kind of discovering the tools. I unfortunately partner teams haven't quite gotten the budgets available to them to drive those decisions. But the more that we see these individuals with chief partner officer, chief ecosystem officer reporting to the directly to the CEO and directly to the founder, the budgets and hiring and those decisions I feel like will only follow pretty shortly after that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think like there's a need for partnerships teams to drive more revenue,
Yeah, yeah,
and like and the dollars speak, and like that's how you get a seat at the table, and it's how you get more budget and everything else. And I love that like definitely your product is a enabler of that. It's a it like you're driving leads and you're tracking revenue through the product, and you're incentivizing people to do more of it, which I think is absolutely awesome. Like
yeah, for sure.
as we kind of wrap up, it'd be awesome to hear from you. Like a question we ask everyone: what's something that you recently learned that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yes. So I was at the Cloud Software Association conference. I'll say I was at a conference last week, and I had a chance to hear a number of different people speak in the partner space. Um, there was a few things that really stood out to me, but the one that stood out to me the most was Bob Moore, the founder at Crossbeam. Like listening to him speak on additional tailwinds that I had not realized myself. I'm more about the real world tailwinds that are happening that are fueling partnerships, but being able to understand the data tailwinds that are driving the growth of partnerships overall. So and it was interesting to me that so much of it has been spawned and built on what Crossbeam is doing. I thought that was very interesting because it's basically fueling an entire new part of partnerships that was missing. It was completely missing. Was this like unlocking this data key of multiple data points and hundreds of thousands of data points that existed between two companies that we were just never able to access before. And so to me, I learned that there's always new opportunities, even in a market or in an area of business that feels saturated or feels like it's reached its potential. There's still so much more underneath every single one, and it got me thinking about other verticals and like other areas that we feel like have reached their maturity level, and really they probably haven't. So that was my most recent learning kind of light bulb moment, if you will.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely love that. And yeah, I think could listen to Bob talk all day about the opportunity there. You know, he's so sharp, and you know, I think that that's such an exciting application of what the partnerships team is doing. You know, being able to unlock, you know, unlock the marketing team, unlock the product team, unlock the success team, but like with the kind of data access as well as the customer access. And
Yeah,
so yeah, it's a real opportunity.
because the before, I mean, it was unlocking, like partners were moving up because of like the visual evidence of what was happening. Oh, we struck this huge partnership, and it's driving 8% of all overall revenue now. But now it gives it so much more even tangible proof behind it, which just didn't exist.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, Eddie, thank you so much for the time. It's like super helpful to get your input here. I think
For
like
sure.
it's rare to have someone that has such strong sales chops that's now in the partnerships world, and so it's like really great to get your perspective and also just on where the industry's going. So thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ty. Enjoyed it.
Awesome.